Hello everybody and welcome to the most undervalued growth stocks video. It's a video that I publish every week on this channel, and what I do is I go through each of my stock and I rank them with enterprise value, revenue growth over the next 12 months, gross profit, and I use my own valuation metrics and I try to assess which stock is, in my view, the most undervalued stock for that growth. And so this is a recurring video. A lot of what I say I have said in prior videos, so if this is not your first time seeing this video, you may want to just pause and take a look at my ranking right here. And if this is your first time on the channel, welcome. I do these videos to kind of reach new viewers. So let me tell you a little bit about how I do things on Beat the Denominator. So how do I do things? So if you're new to the channel, I focus on growth stocks, hyper growth stocks specifically. And the way I define hyper growth stocks is that they enter in my coverage as soon as they are predicted to grow at 30% revenue growth by analysts or by me. So I'm looking for at least 30% revenue growth. And why do I pick 30%? I pick 30% because I want to beat monetary inflation. Monetary inflation I estimate to be at about 15% each year. So the channel is named Beat the Denominator because I'm trying to beat monetary inflation. Monetary inflation as defined as growth in the money stock being both M1 money stock as well as euro dollars. And we've seen in 2020, 2021, they were way higher than 15% in growth. Of course, with the Fed raising interest rates right now, they've been roughly flat in the U.S., although commercial banking activity has remained high and new dollars being created each time. So that's why I believe a company needs to grow revenue at least at 30% a year just to stay afloat. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to stay afloat. And why do I focus on enterprise value over gross profit? Well, first of all, I use enterprise value because I want to punish companies that have a lot of debt in my ranking. So enterprise value takes out debt, right? It just looks at market cap plus net cash and it removes the debt. And I think it's a much better metric to use than market cap. And then why do I use gross profit? I use gross profit because it's the most relevant metric for my style of investing, because all of the stocks that I invest in are early on. They are right early in their adoption curve, and they are not yet mainstream product. And so this is the product adoption curve, and you can see my style of investing is I try to buy stocks right around 5 to 10% adoption and ride them all the way up to 60-70% adoption of that product. And once the product is adopted by 60-70% of the population, that's when I want to be out of that stock. And this is a process that typically lasts 10 to 15 years if you look at product adoption. And why do I look at product adoption and innovation in general, innovative stocks in general? That's because if you want to achieve 30% revenue growth, the only way to do that is to get right at the exponential part of that S-curve. You can see right here, as I show you, this is the exponential part of the S-curve. That's where I try to get my stocks at. And so all of these products are products that are not consensus, and I see it in my comments all the time. A lot of people disagree with my picks. That's because they're not consensus products. That's because there's new product adoption. And so when you discuss products, like electric cars, for example, in the US, it's still only 5% adoption. It is not a consensus opinion. By the time a product becomes a consensus opinion, it's likely mainstream, it's likely widespread, and that growth, that 30% plus revenue growth, is likely over, and therefore it is not a stock for me. The way I invest is I try to look at innovation and let innovation do the work, rather than say financial engineering through buybacks and all of that sort of stuff, which is something that more mature companies do, like Apple, for example. So let me just go ahead and get started and tell you a little bit about my ranks and my ranking. So the cheapest stocks in my universe are HIMS, StoneCo, and Lovesac. This has not changed in a long while. Valuations of stock relative to each other has not changed that much. And so, that's why I believe this little bit of a rally that we've had, it seems to me like we have a long way to go in that rally, in my view, in my humble view. So for example, let me show you here, HIMS. So HIMS is a stock that I cover heavily on the channel because it is the most undervalued stock. So why would be HIMS rating at a 0.06? So what is this, right? A 0.006 on enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth. So this is my spin on the PEG ratio, the price to earnings to growth ratio of Peter Lynch. I've modified it to use gross profit instead of earnings because my stocks are not optimized for earnings, right? And I'm using revenue growth because revenue is my most important metric. It is the metric that you can't cheat on. And we know the PEG ratio. You want to try to get a PEG ratio under 1 if you follow Peter Lynch's formula. And so for my formula, I think it's fair to assume that a ratio under 0.5 is considered very good, and you definitely want to see something under a 1, or at least that's the way I like it. I like it under a 1, and so these stocks are dirt cheap. It is beyond comprehension how these stocks are cheap. I mean, you have stocks that are trading at twice forward gross profit. Really, the market is overlooking a lot of these smaller cap stocks. I think it's overlooking them. The most expensive, what are the top most expensive ones? Well, you have Nvidia, which I've sold. Very expensive company. They really have to win AI and then some to justify that valuation, in my view. And they may, they very well may. They are the leader in their field. Shopify, very popular U.S. e-commerce, high growth stock. Canadian company, but operates very, very strongly in the U.S. Again, very expensive too. And I am out of Shopify and the Trade Desk. The Trade Desk is an advertising stock. It's a buy-side advertising platform that is also doing very well. So let me walk you through each stock within each megatrend and tell you a little bit about their valuation. How about we get started with energy revolution stocks? So energy is getting revolutionized. We're getting towards a near zero marginal cost for energy, mainly due to solar and due to batteries. Batteries and solar are really helping energy tend near zero marginal cost. And this revolution is in my view, a true revolution, and few people see this right now, and few people agree with this, but more people will see it. And so that's why the first stock that I have in there is Tesla, right? Tesla costs less than $10 to fuel a Tesla for 400 miles, less than $10, right? How much does it cost for a gas car? Probably 10 times as much. That's why it's a 10x improvement. When a product is a 10x improvement, people flock to the company selling that product, and people just buy that product in droves. That's why Tesla, despite all of the fear that we had in January of 2023, despite all of that fear, the product is still sold out in many regions of the world, and we have wait times now that are back on Teslas. And this is a very complex company, of course. The Standard Oil of the 2020s, the Standard Oil of our era, from a network of gas stations to a network of battery packs to an AI company to a semi-truck company to a car-making company. There's so much going on in that company. Of course, this stock is heavily covered on YouTube. What's another company that I like in Energy Revolution? It's Enphase. Enphase is a microinverter company. I believe they have the winning technology for solar. So solar energy, right? We can't use DC as it comes out of solar panels. And by the way, solar panels are a commodity. That's why I don't like to invest in solar panels. China has won the game of solar panels and will likely be the producer for the world in the solar panel space. They're a commodity, but as far as turning that electricity, turning those electrons that hit those panels, that silicon, how do you turn that electricity into something usable by us, by our homes? Well, you need an inverter. You need to turn it into AC. And how do you turn it into AC? There are string inverters and there are micro inverters. String inverters are older technology. They're kind of appliance-like. They're bulky systems, and they use a string system where you can have 6, 9, 12 panels connected in series. There's a whole bunch of issues with that. One of the bigger ones is shadows. For example, whenever you have shadow, you can't exploit the full string. There are also issues with lack of redundancy. There's also issue with the warranty on that technology, issues with installing that technology. which is why I believe that microinverters is the better way to go. And microinverters is simple. It's a teeny tiny box. You place it behind each solar panel, and then you wire everything in AC, and you forget about DC. Again, very tiny technical detail here, but nonetheless an important one, which is why I think microinverters will be the standard in the future. That's why Enphase is my number 2 stock position, and Enphase is dirt cheap right now, in my view. Moving on to STEM. STEM is what? STEM is an installer of battery packs. And really, we really don't care that much about installing battery packs. It's not a very good business. The margin is really bad at 20%. But the good business is the attach rate that they get on their Athena software. They have 100% attach rate, and they sign contracts that are 20 years after they sell a battery pack. And so the whole point of STEM is that the hope is after 10 years, all of these battery packs that I installed will still be running the software, and you'll move from a company that's mostly a hardware provider, now installer, right, hardware contractor, to a company that's going to be a software company that runs all of these mega packs. And of course, mega packs are what? They are these giant systems of batteries that utilities as well as corporations are getting installed on their sites. And the reason why you need to install batteries is because in a world where everything is becoming electric, in a world where redundancy is very important, you need to be able to store the energy near to where it is used, consumed. And also, very important point, semi-trucks. If semi-trucks are going to be a thing, which I believe they are, if you look at the Tesla semi-truck, it is better in every way than a gas truck. And if semi-trucks are going to be a thing, the only way you're going to be able to get a mega charger, right, able to charge a full giant 44-ton semi-truck in a minute, the only way to do that is going to be with a mega charger. And you obviously can't pull a mega charger out of any grid connection, or at least you would need like a very industrial grid connection. The only way to do that is to have a giant battery, and you can dump electricity at very, very high tension, 1 megawatt, and you can charge a truck, a 44-ton semi-truck, in a minute. That is the goal for the future, and those mega packs are necessary. So just like every home has a fridge, every home will have every industrial site, I believe, will have a major mega pack to act as a backup. And every home, incidentally, will also have a battery, which is what Enphase is currently working on. Enphase is currently working on developing batteries for your own home. So these are my 3 picks in the energy revolution sector. Let me move on to healthcare. What about healthcare? I have HIMSS and I have Teladoc. This is a tale of 2 stories. HIMSS is a company that focuses on narrow preventative healthcare. They are a platform with providers that when you connect with HIMSS, you try to go see them for a tiny issue. They will pair you with a doctor. You will pay to see the doctor, and then you may get access to a medical prescription that you need if the doctor deems that you need it. And HIMSS is both an e-pharmacy, as I like to call it, and an e-doctor platform where you have doctors registered and clients that come. And the reason why HIMSS has been able to grow so fast and do that so well is because they operate fully outside of the insurance system. They don't accept insurance, and therefore they are more agile. And that hasn't been a problem for HIMSS because they focused on things that are typically not covered by insurance, like, say, products for hair loss, like finasteride, for example. Products for hair loss, typically not covered by insurance. You can get that with HIMSS. And of course, Teladoc is the opposite there. Teladoc is the smaller company, and Teladoc signs contracts with insurance companies so that through your insurance, you can have access to Teladoc. And they're very different businesses. I like HIMSS better because I think the ability to move fast, the ability to iterate, innovate quickly is the most important thing. And Teladoc because they work with insurance, I view them as the slower growth company. And this is a company that I used to own, that I've sold because I've been disappointed by the revenue growth, and I've been disappointed by how much capital they've wasted in their acquisition of Livongo. Anyway, topic for a different video. Let me move on to data warehouses and data monitoring stocks. I have 4 of them really quickly: Datadog, Snowflake, Palantir, MongoDB. Datadog is an infrastructure monitoring stock. It takes logs from all sorts of different servers, your IT stack. All of those send logs, and through Datadog you can see the logs, and whenever you have a problem of any kind, you can spot it in Datadog and try to address your issue. Snowflake is a data lake and a data warehouse. So what is that? Well, in the past you used to store data in databases and servers that you had on-prem on your premises, and today you store it in the cloud. So the best way that they describe themselves, and Snowflake is a company that has great marketing, they describe themselves as the data cloud. It's a cloud to store your data. The big deal about Snowflake is data sharing. They are really pushing data sharing and your ability to share data with your suppliers, with your partners, really easily, and manage access to data, which is something that is kind of harder to do and kind of a bulkier process to do if you try to do that with APIs, application programmer interfaces. And so they have a lot of network effects going on with the data sharing marketplaces that they have on Snowflake. Then you have Palantir. Palantir is the leader in military AI. They have a software called Gotham. Gotham is still growing fairly fast, and it's a software that really helps soldiers and helps people stop terrorism and things like that. And that software is very successful with the military of the West. Palantir, a lot of people love Palantir because of Foundry. And Foundry is a commercial software that tries to apply the same concept to companies and try to use AI to run companies and make predictions and recommendations on how companies should be run. Noteworthy to say that we haven't seen the adoption that we've hoped for Foundry so far, at least that I've hoped. But I have a lot of confidence in the CEO's long-term guidance of 30%. And so, of course, a lot of these IT companies, you've had a lot of IT spending that has been restricted, which is why, even though we've seen good increases in many of these companies in customer count, like you have good increases in customer count, but as far as signing contracts, it's been slow. It's been fairly slow, and this is actually true for all of them, not just Palantir. Nonetheless, very happy to own the stock. Then you have MongoDB. MongoDB is a NoSQL database, and so you have a lot of developers who like to use the Atlas MongoDB database as opposed to using a SQL database. As an example, Snowflake, for example, uses SQL. And that's a developer's preference, but that developer's preference has really propelled MongoDB to a very interesting value proposition and very interesting company in the data space, and I like the stock very much. Let me move on to cybersecurity really quickly. You have Cloudflare. Cloudflare is the more expensive out of the three. Cloudflare is, and if you're in IT, don't yell at me for saying that, but Cloudflare is a VPN for websites. Cloudflare hides where your website server is located at, and if you're hiding where the server is located at, cyber attacks, they have a harder time getting through because you don't know which server to attack. So it hides the origin server of a website. Nonetheless, this company, a lot of people find this company to be very aggressive, especially as they're trying to get into the zero trust space and other spaces. And this has been a very storied company, pretty much very loved by investors out there. My two preferred stocks as far as valuation goes in this are CrowdStrike and Zscaler. Really quickly, CrowdStrike, antivirus. I call it an antivirus, but it uses its network of computers that have the Falcon software installed, and whenever there's an attack to any of the antiviruses software installed on any of the endpoint devices, i.e. the laptops. If any laptop out of the millions of laptops that have Falcon's CrowdStrike Falcon installed, if any one of them gets attacked, then there's network effects, because the software sees, hey, there's an attack, and it updates the software for all of the software that are installed on the network. So you have network effects, which leads CrowdStrike, in my view, to be a better player than, say, competition such as SentinelOne, which is one that people often bring up in comparison to CrowdStrike. They are the leader, in my view. Then you have Zscaler. Zscaler is the pioneer in Zero Trust. Really briefly, what is Zero Trust is that if CrowdStrike fails, if your computer gets infected with a virus, then that virus can't infect the entire network, because it's a moat and castle system where every single computer is contained and every single connection throughout, say, two networks, two computers in a company network, like you have an IT enterprise network. When you have multiple devices connected together, every time they need to identify themselves, and so there is zero trust. Once you've accessed a device, you can't access the whole thing. So what it does is it prevents the spreading of the fire. One laptop is impacted, not the whole company, and it really helps against things like ransomware, for example. Let me move on to e-commerce. In e-commerce, I love three companies. Shopify is so expensive right now, though. Shopify and thus I haven't touched it. I think it's too expensive. I'm waiting for a stock to go down. But as far as MercadoLibre and C Limited go, both companies are great. C Limited has a good business with Shopee in Indonesia. They're doing really well in Asia right now. Not China, right? The rest of Asia. They also have C Money. Problem with C Limited is there's still some overhang from their gaming division and the banning of their Free Fire gaming app that they've had banned. That's why I prefer MercadoLibre. MercadoLibre is the leader in Latin America. They've lost a competitor in Brazil. Lots of things going for them. Founder-led. Lots of great things going on for MercadoLibre. In my view, it's my favorite play for e-commerce. Let me move on to my payments. I'll go really quickly over the payments. Square and DLocal. These are two companies that I'm not worrying too much about right now because they're smaller positions, but they're both under attacks by short sellers, and so this is very, very unfortunate. As much as I love these two companies, my favorite company out of the three payment stocks that I've covered on the channel is StoneCo. StoneCo is part of a duopoly in Brazil for payment terminals and really paying at small businesses, right? And so they are a kind of a copy of Square, but for Brazil, and they're in a duopoly with their competitor PagSeguro at this point. And so this company is still growing really fast, still great margins, and the stock is absolutely dirt cheap. Let me move on to my chip makers. Well, and I should really call them not chip makers, but cheap intellectual property companies, because the chips from these stocks are obviously made by Taiwan Semi, but Taiwan Semi is, too small of a grower for me to touch Taiwan Semi, and so I'm more interested in companies that grow fast, i.e. companies that own the patents and the intellectual property. And so we have Nvidia, Indie, and AMD. Nvidia is so expensive. Yes, they're winning in GPUs. GPUs are so essential to AI and everything that has to do with ChatGPT and all that craze. But everybody knows that, and everybody sees that as well, which is why the stock has run up so much, and I've rarely seen that in the markets. Indie Semiconductors, that's a company that provides Tesla competitors with things like LiDAR systems for competitors who want to try to do self-driving. They provide in-car entertainment systems, AV, audio-video systems, and so they're a niche player in the semiconductor field. The last one is AMD. AMD is the more diversified maker of semiconductors. They provide for example, chips for video game makers like Xbox, Microsoft's Xbox. They also have an embedded division where we provide embedded electronics for things like the higher-end Teslas. They have a successful line of CPUs, actually really competing against Intel with their CPUs. And they have some GPUs, but most people who know the GPU space will tell you that NVIDIA is the leader and that AMD is the laggard and is kind of following behind NVIDIA every time. And so in my view right now, the chip stocks, there's not much to like because they are so expensive, aside from Indie. But Indie, of course, is a riskier play, tiny positions, by the way. Whenever I talk about a stock, like say a STEM or an Indie or a Figs that I'm going to talk about, these are tiny positions. I mean, these are really tiny. I would be very wary about having very large position about all of this. The only exception I'm making is for HIMS, because I feel like on HIMS I have spent the time to actually justify my position in HIMS. I've really spent the time studying HIMS. But aside from HIMS, I think proper position sizing is so important. Let me move on to my ad tech. The Trade Desk. The Trade Desk is a very storied company. A lot of shareholders love the Trade Desk. The Trade Desk is a buy-side advertising platform, i.e. companies that want to advertise go on the Trade Desk to find places to advertise, and they have a leading position in their niche. And of course you have Pubmatic. Pubmatic is a small cap. Again, riskier stock. Very interesting company, both from a valuation perspective and from a growth perspective. Growth for both of these, by the way, has stalled because of fears of a recession. A lot of companies cutting spending on advertising. Advertising is often the first thing to go. Whenever companies fear a recession, advertising is the first thing that a lot of companies cut. Pubmatic, though, focuses on publishers, i.e. if you have space on your website, you are going to sell that space, and they focus on the sell side, on publishers selling their digital real estate, their digital space to whoever wants to buy it. Different sides of ad tech business. These stocks are interesting in my view, but this sector has to rebound, and right now with fears of a recession, that's not happening. Then I have my lifestyle stocks. I have Celsius, Lovesac, and Figs. So really quickly, let me get Celsius. So let's talk about Celsius. Celsius, if you're in Europe, I'm in Europe right now. Haven't seen Celsius anywhere. I see giant aisles of energy drinks. Most of them, many of them American, like Monster is very successful in the US and successful in Europe. Celsius is a company that yet has to reach the shores of Europe. But in the US, it's everywhere. Like you can't hardly go to a gas station or a grocery store that doesn't have a Celsius. And so, of course, when you look at a company like Celsius, look at the growth rate, 67% anticipated over the next four quarters. The margin is very high for the beverage space. They have a partnership with Pepsi. Really, I think Celsius is a company that has a lot going for it. And I can't help to think about the story of Monster Beverage. If you look at Monster Beverage, they've got outstanding returns. Can Celsius do that? By the way, all of these stocks, which I call my lifestyle stocks, are new brands. They're brands that are emerging, getting adopted, and replacing old world brands that were created through television, right? Television, evening news. You watch evening news and you add an ad, and that's how brands like Tide came to be, for example, because they were the only ones who could afford mass advertising and mass marketing. Today, there's brands that have new forms of advertising that are able to, overtake the old brand. I think Celsius is trying to do that with a lot of the legacy energy drinks. Lovesac, I think, is trying to do that, and if you look at the numbers, doing fairly well doing that with a lot of a furniture legacy brand. If you're familiar with Lazy Boy, I would put Lazy Boy as a legacy brand that's getting competition against Lovesac. And if you've ever seen a beanbag, for example, you know that a beanbag is probably dirt cheap to make, and the margins are so much better than Michigan-made recliners. Anyways, that's a detail, but I've made a full analysis about Lovesac and where it may be headed. Lovesac, noteworthy to say that Lovesac is so down because, obviously the market being how it is, people are not buying real estate, which means they're never ever buying furniture ever again, right? That's how the market thinks, and of course that's not true. People buy furniture because they need to. They don't buy furniture because of interest rates. They buy furniture because they need to. That's kind of a difference between Austrian type of economic thinking and more of a Keynesian type of economic thinking. Anyways, moving on to the last one, Figs. Figs is a stock that I've been disappointed in very much. At this point, this is a stock that I'm not touching anymore, even though it is inexpensive. What they try to do, Figs, is they try to take the scrubs, right? In the medical field, healthcare scrubs. They try to take scrubs and they try to make them fashionable. Lululemon. What Lululemon did to yoga pants, in the 90s, yoga pants used to be weird. Nowadays, yoga pants are kind of in. They're kind of trendy. Figs is trying to do the same thing with scrubs. I have doubts as to whether they are succeeding at that or not, and I will make another video on Figs shortly, but I've covered the stock quite extensively. Let me move on to my cloud niche stocks, because I'm just like every other guy, I love Microsoft Azure, I love Google Cloud, GCP, right, how it's called. I love Amazon Web Services, but these cloud stories are embedded within giants that are not going to grow, in my view, at 30% revenue growth. Giants whose stock grow because of buybacks that often happen at the edge instead of actual really, really strong revenue growth. And again, there's nothing wrong with overwhelmingly strong tech monopolies, but I don't think that's how alpha is generated as far as beating the denominator, in my view. Great saving stocks. That's why when I talk about an Amazon, a Google, Microsoft, I look at those stocks as savings account stocks, right? Great stocks if you want to save money before buying a house. Not investment advice, but in my view, I look at these stocks like that. Safe players. If I want to find growth, strong growth, I have to look into smaller players. I have DigitalOcean and AXON in there. DigitalOcean is a cloud provider for small businesses and startups and newly trained developers. Average bill is something like $50 a month, and you can learn how to train on the cloud, and you can deploy very small applications in the cloud. Thanks to DigitalOcean, the company's valuation is interesting, and the growth has stalled a little bit, but it could pick back up, and this is a stock that I'm looking at. AXON is the same story, but for body cameras for police officers, and so it records whenever a police officer do whatever, they turn on their camera and it records it straight into the cloud. And so it allows you with evidence management. It avoids, if there's any issues, you can have access to the videos, etc., etc. So both companies are what I call the cloud niche business. Let me move on to the neobanks. The neobanks, I have two neobanks. I have Nubank and SoFi. Really briefly, why neobanks? Well, the neobank story is the end of a branch, right? We don't need branches anymore. Fewer and fewer businesses in the West accept cash. I ask, if cash is gone, what's the need for branches, right? Every single other thing that a branch does can be done remotely and digitally. Advice, that kind of stuff, that can be done remotely for a lot of the wave of next wave of consumers, right? Gen Z. Well, millennials are pretty much banked right now, but at least Gen Z, that new wave of consumers, they're not gonna walk into a branch. At least that's not what I think. And thus these comprehensive apps for banking are getting adopted, and they're much more agile than an app that is developed by an entrenched banking company that has relied on a moat to compete for half a century. Like if you've relied on your moat, i.e. your network of branches, to compete for half a century, it's likely that your IT is not going to be that agile, and you're not going to be able to iterate on your app and have the best rates and the best everything on your app. And there's an issue, of course, with innovation and how quickly can you offer a new product on your app. But there's also the issue of cost. Can you really afford to offer the type of services, products, returns, and say a Nubank or SoFi offers? And so if you look at things like yield and savings account, other things like credit cards, we can understand how a neobank is able to provide a better product, and better products win. Better products win, and obviously you can play and really have fun with orders of magnitude when you look at the savings accounts rates, because savings accounts at a lot of major banks are still 0.01%. And so if you want to look at the savings account, of any neobank, right? If it's like just 1% on your checking, well, that's 2 orders of magnitude. But the rewards can be much higher. If you multiply the rewards you get on your credit cards, you get on your savings accounts, your checking accounts, etc., your rewards can be much higher. Can they be as high as 3 orders of magnitude, 1,000 times better? If it's 1,000 times better, if a product is 100 times or 1,000 times better, people flock to them. People just fight to be customers of those companies because the product is so compelling. And that's why, if you look at the number of customers that say I've joined SoFi, I mean it grows extremely fast. These are companies that grow extremely fast, and Nubank has found even faster growth in Latin America because a lot of people are unbanked and they're not going through the brick and mortar stage of banking. They're going straight to the app. And of course the gross margins are excellent. These two stocks are cheap. I always have a hard time choosing the one I prefer. Right now I prefer Nubank because I am a little weary about student loans. And student loans, yes, they're coming back, etc. But for some reason I'm not buying it. So we'll see how that goes. Platforms, I'll finish with platforms. These are all two-sided platforms. I love two-sided platforms very much. A two-sided platform is a platform where, of course, providers of a service sign up, and because there are many providers of the service, you have customers that go to that platform to have access to all of the providers, to have access to all of that network of providers. And so that's why a company like Airbnb, for example, it's all a matter of trying to have as many hosts as possible, as many experiences of housing available as possible, and the more experiences, the more great housing option you can show on your website, the more customers will come to Airbnb and sign up. And it's a self-reinforcing loop. And Airbnb, as far as platforms go, is my favorite in there. I think it's a very solid company. It grows very fast. I do not have value investing metrics on there, but if you were to look at Airbnb and study it from a value investing standpoint, you'd find that this is a very, very profitable company with excellent EBITDA margins. But granted, my style of investing is about product adoption. So to me, it's less important. But if you look at a stock like Airbnb, for example, I have a few stocks that could fit both growth investors and value investors in there. Airbnb is one, HIMS is one, Pubmatic is one. Some stocks you can find both growth investors and value investors get behind. For example, StoneCo. If you look at StoneCo, that's the case of StoneCo. You have both Warren Buffett and Cathie Wood own StoneCo. So some stocks are not polarizing. Some stocks can fit both the style of growth investors and value investors. I believe Airbnb is one of those stocks. Etsy and Fiverr. Etsy is trying to do the same thing for crafts. There's no denying that what Etsy has done with crafts and unlocking a lot of labor that was not monetized previously out of people's hobbies is very interesting, and they've really created a new product out of thin air. I mean, they've created a market out of thin air. Etsy is the epitome of a blue ocean. People doing crafts. It never used to be a big business. Now it's a big business. That's the beauty of creating induced demand, creating a new demand for a product, for a market niche that has not been exploiting before. This is the very definition of innovation, and Etsy has done that. And Fiverr is a company right now. Stock is a little cheap because a lot of people are getting fearful that ChatGPT is going to replace everything and labor is going to disappear, right? The market's extreme sometimes. The market is extreme and it thinks, Fiverr is gone, it's done, we're never going to pay people to do small tasks, small intelligence tasks, because it's all going to be done by software. Market sometimes gets extreme one way and extreme another, and right now that's the reason why Fiverr is cheap. I still, there is some threats from AI, but you have to ask yourself, how big of a threat is it? Anyways, Etsy and Fiverr are two stocks that I'm waiting to get into. I do not own those because the growth over the next quarters is too small. But as soon as there are signs that growth will really, really grow, these are stocks that I'm interested in, because platforms are a wonderful business model. Just like SaaS, software as a service, is a truly outstanding business model, new style of doing business. So is platforms. Platforms are a wonderful business model that's really being enabled by the digital connected world that we live in. And this was it. This was not investment advice, just entertainment. I really hope you were entertained. Appreciate your likes, appreciate your subscribes. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.